Good evening, everyone. Today is December 2nd, 2010. We are the Goffstown Budget Committee. And Kathy, if you would start the roll, and we will go clockwise.
Kathy Simard.
Clockwise.
Christy Garrison.
Richard Fletcher.
John Burt.
Bill Gordon.
Paul Andrews.
John Heichel.
Dan Cloutier.
Guy Karen. Ivan Beliveau.
John Dillon.
Jen Getchell.
David Pierce, Selectman's representative, and we're expecting Scott Gross later in the evening.
Mr. Hart won't be here tonight. I'm not sure whether Mr. Bates told me he could or could not, so at the moment he's excused. Suzanne is probably still excused if she's not here, and we will wait for Scott, but only one of you at a time. Well, we are here tonight to continue for what I promised on Tuesday, was to give the committee an opportunity to go through their final thoughts before we go into official deliberation. So who wants to start? And if you don't want to go first, I'll close it, and we'll just start with getting right to the business at hand. So if I don't see a hand, Mr. Gordon, you'd like to start, then Mr. Burt.
I'll do it. Okay, I'm Bill Gordon, and I have looked at the demographics of Goffstown over the recent past. My point of reference is from the New Hampshire nh.gov website and the demographics of the town. Goffstown has been growing very slowly, roughly about 0.5% a year. And this is a very good thing because it's of a lesser impact on the need for more and more infrastructure and more support. We're nice, pretty flat growth. And this is less than the state had proposed or projected a few years back. They were talking about 1.5%. Right now it's sitting about 0.5%. During the same time, the head count for government employees has more than doubled, while the private sector employment head count has increased by less than 4%, basically flat. I'm saying this, and that government is state, federal, and local, but primarily local. In terms of 2008 dollars, this period of time is from 98 to 2008, the compensation for government employees in total has increased 86%. And the private sector has been totally flat. I think the growth was like $12,000 or something in total out of millions. The conclusions, really slow growth, which is good. Commercial growth, virtually non-existent, which has a very serious impact going out on the tax base unless we do something about doing some commercial growth. We're really only depending upon the private homeowners for the tax base. The private sector growth is losing ground totally as the tax rate increases. And the government growth, it tracks pretty well with the country. However, it's out of control and unsustainable, plain and simple, in my opinion. Conclusions, we need to hold, or solutions, we need to hold the line on tax increases. We need to reassess the need for current uses. We need to push back at all levels, state, federal, and local, by contacting your representatives with your concerns and your ideas. Don't ask others to pay for services we can provide for ourselves. Some commercial development is needed to augment the tax base, and everybody should get involved. It's your government and your tax bill.
and you made it within 4 minutes. Mr. Burt, do I have anybody to add to the list now? Mr. Ivan, okay? You're up.
Thank you, Chairman Kludiger. My name is John Burt, and I was sworn in yesterday as a state representative, and I want to thank the voters for that. And the reason I want to bring that up is we are facing an approximately $500 to $800 million deficit. And where that money's going to come from? The taxpayers. And some hard choices are going to have to be made this upcoming year for the next 2 years as we get through this. There's an alleged $70 million surplus from last year. I think that's a little fuzzy math, but they say it's real. They say it's there. But that is not going to make up for the $500 to $800 million deficit. And what I mean by that is there's going to be some tough choices that we have to make. And there's going to be some hard votes that I have to make. And I'm going to make them. And where does that, what happens when the state cuts? And we have no choice. The state is going to cut. I've seen the bills that are coming. I've been up there for orientation and a few other meetings that I've been to. There's huge cuts coming. And guess what? It's gonna affect the school budget, and it's gonna affect what the town receives from the state. So I just wanna point that out as we go into debate here, that, you know, there's been talk from some saying how, you know, the average income is whatever it is, $78,000 or $80,000. And that Goffstown is doing really well, and et cetera, et cetera. Well, I'm telling you right now, Goffstown's not gonna do very well over the next 2 years from the state, because hard choices have to be made. And eventually, we're gonna have to address the federal problem. The current administration is not gonna deal with it at this point. It's gonna happen after 2012, and we better get ready, because we're talking trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars. So hopefully everybody will look at that as we start debating. I personally would like to see a 10% reduction across the board. I hope we could achieve that, and good luck to us. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Burt. Ivan?
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ivan Beliveau. I just wanted to do a little snapshot of the national economy and how that affects us. And I've sent everyone graphics, there's 10 graphics. I live on a budget, so I apologize I couldn't run 150 color copies. I live on a bottom line and budget, and I haven't figured out how to tax myself yet, so. I'll start this around also. These happen to be the color charts if you want to scan through them quickly. As I said, you have them at home.
Are there 2 papers?
It's not that, no. Oh, what am I sending you? What do you have?
We got 2.
State of the economy. I don't know what that is. That's probably mine. I apologize.
You are running into your 4 minutes, Ivan.
Yeah, got it. So what there are 10 graphics. They talk about the state of the economy nationally, and that has an impact locally. The first graphic talks about housing, and it's called Start Swimming. And in the Union Leader, Fridays, if you happen to take a look, here's a couple of them here. Every Friday, there's about 6 pages of foreclosure mortgagee sales, about 15 per page, 6 pages. There's about 90 a week, about 46,800 foreclosures. I mean, that has an impact. The second one, what a difference a few years make, housing. We've all heard it, we all know there's a U.S. housing bubble that's still collapsing. And I want to say one thing about these kind of statistics in general. When there's a lot of room for interpretation, and they get expressed in different ways. But for instance, when a multinational company reports that its sales have gone up for the quarter tremendously, and you do a little research and you find out the bulk of their sales and manufacturing are international, that's not really a plus for our economy. Or if somebody reports that the used housing, the existing housing sales have gone up for the previous month. And you do some research and you find out that that's due to the foreclosure sales increasing. That's not necessarily a plus also. So statistics, you need to use some sense on how you interpret this. So, we're entering another phase, the third graphic. We've got the second wave of mortgage resets. This is not the subprime, this is prime all-day real estate. We're gonna see another year and a half of that. Number 4, the loans becoming overdue. Homeowners are now about 4 or 5% are 90 days overdue, and that's increasing. That's not good. The real value of housing, 5, is still dropping. We had a housing bubble that came after the real estate bubble, and that is still collapsing. That's not a good deal. And people owe, because of the deficit, the federal debt is over 14 trillion. That's graphic 6. U.S. residents owe 14 trillion, and the deficit continues yearly. If you divide that number by the population who can pay, you come up with a pretty big number. That's gonna be an issue. How am I doing?
20 seconds.
Employment is not doing well. Where have all the jobs gone? Where did all the credit go? You have the graphics. I think it's unfair to ask a person who's at the effect of this, who is possibly losing their house, losing their job, is underemployed. I think it's really difficult to ask them to absorb increases for a segment of our economy that isn't in those same circumstances.
Thank you, Ivan. Mr. Dillon?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. John Dillon. Glad for the opportunity to make a few thoughts here in 4 minutes. Just partly reminders for myself and maybe for the committee and maybe for the voters too. I think one of the reasons I'm here is I think voters should have an option when it comes to the ballot and the budget. I think there should be an alternative, at least once in a while, instead of ever increasing taxes. I agree, and I realize there can be serious disagreements about budgeting. However, voters will decide and do decide, and that's how our democratic process works. All residents and citizens have an opportunity to have their say, especially in the final vote, actually. I think it's a bad belief that taxes must or should always go up. I think if we believe that, we're already going to fulfill that prophecy. Maybe they ought to go up. Maybe they shouldn't always go up. Maybe sometimes they should go down. I campaigned on lower taxes, and Goffstown residents elected me, and I know that's true for a number of others on this committee. I think recent elections confirm, even in Goffstown, looking at returns, I think you can read into that voters, even in Goffstown, are interested in smaller government, less taxes, maybe more accountability for spending. The Budget Committee does not have the last say. Voters can accept our numbers, they can increase them or decrease them. Voters can ratify the new budget warrants or let them fail and let the defaults kick in. I think we have to remember that lower taxes help make Goffstown more attractive for folks who want to move here. They make our own property more valuable if taxes are lower. I think Goffstown, it should be said, has a particularly bad reputation in the area for high taxes and being business unfriendly. And both of these need to be addressed and should be reversed if possible. I don't think either of those help us in any way. I've been impressed being on this board for the first time. I'm very confident. I've grown in confidence in all of our town department heads, to a person, each of them. I believe they know that sometimes the Budget Committee and voters will hand them less money to work with. I believe these department heads are competent to make changes accordingly if that happens, because they're professionals and because they've earned the spots that they hold in those positions. We'll always be in the best position, they will always be in the best position to reprioritize allocations of precious resources. They can make tough decisions as needed. Sometimes I hear arguments that department heads should not have to take responsibility for making reductions in spending. As a citizen, I want department heads that will not only get the best bang for our tax dollars, but who will also be passing on savings to us residents when possible. I want them to know that they don't always have to be growing their turf or departments. In particular, I think most praiseworthy on the town side is the town administration and the library. Regarding budgets, I think the easiest thing in the world to do is to keep expanding them, keep letting them grow. That's the easy thing, not to cut back, not to make harder decisions. And it has been, as has been said in some of our meetings, the elephant in the room are contractual obligations to various unions for personnel salary and benefits.
20 seconds.
And that's a big part of the challenge of our budget, setting the budget. I think finally, the larger economy that we're a part of, at times to me seems like a house of cards. Whether you were a fan of the Bush administration or the current Obama administration, it still often seems like a house of cards. And I don't think Goffstown is immune to the effects of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dillon. Guy, is there anyone else that wants to be on the list?
Chairman Cluter?
Oh,
No, I was wondering how many seconds or minutes I had. Could I yield them to Bill Bates in
No.
case he needs them?
no, it's 4 minutes a person or less.
Right.
It's not, we talked about it on Tuesday, and we said if you could do it less, that's great, and we just get a little further. So I've got Guy, I've got Christie, I've got Bill Bates. Is there anyone else? It's a one-shot deal. Okay, we got Scott. Okay, Guy, go.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm not going to need 4 minutes. I just want to take a slightly different tact. I approached this whole budgeting process here from two perspectives, keeping in mind that the Budget Committee, we're elected by the voters pretty much to do a job that they either don't have time to do or don't want to do. That's why we're here. And our charge basically is to weigh affordability versus services. So, you know, shortly tonight, we're going to start getting into the deliberations on a budget. We're going to be making motions. And so, and I certainly am going to do that. And I've got recommendations I'm going to make and motions I'm going to make. Those recommendations and motions I approached from two perspectives. One was affordability. And keeping in mind, a lot of people in town I've heard lately saying, well, the economy's turned around, things are not as bad as some of us on this committee say. I don't know about your retirement accounts and your investment accounts and your savings accounts. Maybe things are turning around, but it's going to be years before I can recover what I've already lost. Then I've got the other side of it, the balancing act, the services. So I started thinking about that. And you know, services, it's not a piece of equipment. It's not a building, and it's not a computer in an office. It's personnel. It's the people that we have working here. The police officer who unlocks your car, the workers up at Town Hall who help you with your registrations, the firefighters who protect us, the teachers who educate our kids. It's all about the personnel. So I approached any adjustments that I'm going to propose to you people tonight from a perspective of making sure we, number one, keep our personnel, which in effect is our services. And at the same time, I don't want anybody to lose their jobs, especially right now. War chests are gone. It's difficult. And the other thing is to make sure that we can do this in such a way that the budget is affordable. So I looked at the budget line by line by line by line and decided one of two things. Is this something that we got to have? And if yes, I so marked it. Is it something that maybe we can do without? So I so marked it. And then weighed that against what it would cost us if we actually had to eliminate personnel, which I don't want to do, and I did not do in the proposals I'm going to make tonight. So, that's it.
Thank you. You're right, you made it within 2.5 hours. I have Christie.
I'm just reminding that this was information from the Goffstown News, that the school reduced the 2010-2011 by $2.7 million of the unreserved fund that came back to taxpayers to offset the tax rate. And that was a huge factor in our taxes not going up like we had anticipated with the $3.02 tax rate. So that was a great relief to myself and everyone else, but I'm not sure that unreserved fund balance is gonna be that high this coming year. Something to keep in mind.
Bill Bates.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd first like to start with economic data that comes straight from the United States Department of Commerce. U.S. Department of Commerce is responsible for maintaining economic data for this country, upon which that most economists and even many politicians take from when looking at the economy. This is put together by the Economics and Statistics Administration, and all this information is available to anyone who cares to see it at www.economicindicators.gov. And there is other information that is also available at the Bureau of Economics Analysis, which is www.bea.gov. There's no possible way I can sift through all of this that is available in the span of 4 minutes, so I'm going to try to summarize briefly, because these are things we all live with, and part of what I feel like I was elected to do was to start to bring or to align policy and budget here, align it more with the economics we all live in. Personal income in October rose 0.5%. And while going up is always great, if you look at what it was doing back in 2007, you would find that the trend right now has been a nominal trend over the last 6 months. So to put it in economic perspective, personal income is inching up. It is inching up, and that is a good trend, but it's not a strong trend, and the economics of the situation bear that out. Gross domestic product, which is the overall indicator of our economic health, grew at an annual rate of 2.5%. That is real gross domestic product grew at a rate of 2.5% in the third quarter of 2010. That is great news. The trend is going the right way, but that's following a 1.7 growth rate in the second quarter. And overall, what economists at large and the U.S. Federal Reserve tell us is that is a weak growth rate. That is not growing fast enough to add back to foster robust job growth. So while, again, the trend is very good, what it means is the economy is still weak. It's growing, but it's weak, and it's not growing fast enough to return jobs to the marketplace, you know, the jobs that people need in this town to work and to pay taxes, of course. And what's grossly underreported statewide and the economy as the whole is the fact that there are many, many out there who are underemployed. Underemployment means that they don't file for unemployment, but what it means is they're not making as much as they used to. In fact, in a lot of cases, they're making a whole lot less.
20 seconds.
So when you think about that, that's the other thing you need to think about, and I could go on. Manufacturer shipments of inventories, again, good trend, weak output right now, and Ms. DeBriel sent some economic information today that, thank you very much for sending it. It does point to good times in the future, but it still shows that it's weak, and it verifies what Chairman Bernanke said at the last quarterly meeting.
Time is up.
And
It's
said
over up.
that things were
Mr. Bates.
growing weak, and we had to be aware of that. Please keep that in
now,
mind
Mr.
when you're making
Bates, we
decisions.
said 4 minutes,
Thank you.
please. You're welcome. Scott? 4
Yeah.
minutes?
I would agree with what Bill said. I think, you know, the economy is on a slow recovery. I don't think it's the time to be exuberant, but I think it's cautiously optimistic. And I too have been following
reading the paper and looking, I was very surprised to see that New Hampshire now tops the entire country in median income, which really surprised me. That's at $65,000. I was in that same edition of the Union Leader, which was on Wednesday, November 17th. It said that the numbers show that New Hampshire on pace to regain lost jobs. So again, these are some favorable things. Also read in the same Union Leader that New Hampshire holds steady and data showing a changing labor demographic. And interestingly, in this one, I don't know if everybody saw it, but it talked about the unemployment in Goffstown. And I had reported earlier that the unemployment in Goffstown, I think it was August data, was at 5.1%. In the most recent data from October, unemployment in Goffstown is now at 4.1%, which is one of the lowest in the state, obviously one of the lowest in the country. Bedford had slightly lower at 3.7%. So consumer spending's rising a little bit. So I think things are picking up a little bit, but certainly not a time to be, exuberant about things. I respect that what everyone said. This is definitely a balancing act of services, of cost, the ability to pay. That's what we're all here for. Our job is to try to read the tea leaves of the community. And some of us here or read the tea leaves of some people and others from others. Again, it is that balancing act. Ultimately, I think as John Dillon said, it's the voters who are going to have a say. It's our job to make that recommendation. I will say this, the Board of Selectmen, I think went in, maybe not as conservative as some of you would like, but I think that we have for the last couple of years gone on with, deferred some things, and have made adjustments accordingly. One of the concerns that I have for the town in particular is understanding the fact that we want to try to preserve people's livelihoods. We also have to balance that with capital expenditures, fixing your roads and buying your vehicles, et cetera. We can defer things, and we have deferred things, but what makes me nervous and makes me scared sometimes is when I look at that CIP matrix and I look at it over the next couple of years, there is a huge hump there in terms of capital expenditures, whether that be, garbage trucks, graders, police vehicles, fire trucks, you name it, and not to mention our road program. So as we defer these things out, you eventually, sometimes it has a negative effect. So if you time it right, and sometimes things work out, and you fix that car, and you get another year or two out of it, it works out great. And sometimes you put that money in, and then another 6 months later, you're putting in $3,000 more, and then you got to say, oh, why did I do that? So that's a job that we've got to deal with here. If you have any questions on as we go through this, if you have any questions as to our rationale on the Board of Selectmen, that's what I'm here for. So thank you.
I have no one else on the list. Anybody else want to speak of those who have yet to speak? Excellent. Then let's do this. Let's close off the opening remarks. Let me get into the spreadsheet. And the first thing I'm going to do, I sent you all a copy of the beginning number that I would like.
When did you send that?
Excuse me?
When did you send that?
Late last night, about 11:35 p.m.
I did not see my emails yet.
Okay, well, that's okay. What it is actually taking this purple sheet that is in your book and putting it together and then changing that off and capturing its MS7 accountability. So what I'm looking for is a motion to begin our debate with the town budget at $20,377,542 as delivered to us by the Board of Selectmen. And that includes all the subtotals, all the individual totals, and all the line item totals. Do I have someone who would want to sponsor that motion? Is that what you said, Jay?
Yep.
Do I have a second? Mr. Gordon? Okay. Hang on a moment while I also record this.
Could you repeat that number, please?
Yes. If anyone has their purple sheet with them,
I have a white sheet.
the white sheet may or may not be the same. Let me take a peek. slightly different, because there was an adjustment. That number, Bill, 20,377,542.
1,377,542.
And that's the town.
20,377,542.
That's on your spreadsheet from last night?
Yes.
And
That's not the bottom number. This does not include special and separate articles. Those have to be
Oh,
taken up
okay, I got it.
separately,
I see it now.
okay?
Yeah.
So you wanna go up just a little bit to the total
Yep.
operating budget. Okay, yeah.
When did you send that out? 11:30?
Okay, there's one thing I'd like to do at this moment, is get into our debate mode, which means if you need to converse with one another, excuse yourself and leave the room, if you have to. Hopefully you'll be back here when we vote, but I'd like to keep it, one person talks, everybody else listen, okay? And I will try to control this as best I can. At the moment, we have a motion on the floor and a second. The motion was made by Guy. It was seconded by Bill Gordon. Is there a point of order, Christie? Which could be in a parliamentary inquiry.
Did you send out the tax impact workbook that you?
No.
No, okay.
I sent out the big number that said 20,377,542.
Just wanted to make sure I didn't miss it.
Okay. Technically, this is debatable, so Guy, would you like to speak to your motion?
No, other than to say that's a great starting point. Let's get going.
Okay. Mr. Gordon, would you like to speak to your second? No. Anyone else want to speak to the opening number? Seeing none, then with a show of hands, and I have to record this, so I may go ahead and be calling out everyone's name to make sure I got it right. All those in favor of starting with 20,377,542 for the operating budget, please signify by raising your hand. This is unanimous, so that will be easy. There are 14 on the committee. If everyone votes, it takes 8 votes to pass. Kathy, Christie, Dick, Guy, Ivan, Jen, John, Bert, John, Dylan, John, Heichel, Paul, and Scott. I've got everybody in here alphabetically. Okay, that starts us at an opening number. Do we have someone who wants to make a motion? Guy, I see your hand.
How would you like the motion formatted? My motion is gonna involve adjustments to the budget.
Mhm.
I have detailed lines
Yep.
that I want in the record. I've got copies for everyone here. And I don't think it's gonna take long to go through the details of it, but do you want,
I would be looking for department, agency, and object.
okay,
What that does is give me,
so,
it's fund, well, I say department agency, it's really the fund, which is 43111-41100 is the first number that I see on the page. The double 5-digit numbers.
yeah, okay. Going by the sheet you sent last night,
That's the level you wanna make the adjustments by,
I'm gonna be, no, more detailed than that.
which is what I'm going in this book.
Right.
So if you look at the little book, it
But-
has 2,
Yes. I guess what I'm asking you is, do you want the motion at a high level?
Nope.
And then the details explained, or do you want me to go through?
either way we do it,
Mhm.
I'm gonna be reading off the details as we go through, because that's specifically of what you're looking for. So you can start with the detail, and
Okay.
then we can roll it up.
So you want me to read my motion line by line?
Yep.
Okay. Do you want me to pass copies of my motion, which is, well, it's
It-
all contained here?
It'll probably
Prior?
be easier for everybody, so why don't you do it now?
Okay, here we got 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 that way.
And you have one for the scribe?
Coincidentally, yeah, because somebody's missing. Okay, as I run through this motion,
Now, I'm looking, are you going to be reading 6 pages worth of data? 7 pages worth of data?
I don't necessarily, what I'm saying is I don't think I have to read the,
I have to record it
okay,
in detail.
okay.
So whether I use your sheet or not, I still have to go through and I have to do the addition and make sure it all works?
It does.
Okay, yeah, I know it does, but I gotta have to do it, that's what I do.
Yep.
Do you plan on making a motion of this entire packet?
Yes.
Okay,
If I can explain to the committee the
Not yet.
packet.
not yet. It's not seconded yet. So let me do this.
What's, yeah.
We're not there yet. We're still trying to describe how we're gonna form the motion. So if I would say, why don't you start with your total budget, work your way to your subtotals, and if it's okay with the committee, we don't have to, since you all have the details, we don't necessarily have to read the details prior to getting to a second. Committee okay with that? And we will do that. So why don't you read your motion at the macro levels and at your
That
subtotals?
is
$1,935,518 reduction,
correct.
which includes
Where are you?
Right on the cover
front
page.
page.
Front page, bottom number.
Okay, everybody, here's where I'm gonna get into my very stern mode. A question is asked, please send it to the chair so that only one of us is talking at a time, so that we all hear what everybody does. It's Mr. Karen?
Okay, the motion is to adjust our starting number of 20,377,542 downward by I can't quite read that. Okay, by 1,935,518. As will be detailed subsequent to a second.
I second.
We have a motion on the floor to reduce the budget by $1,935,518. The detail is in the packet that you all have. We will be reading that into the record. Mr. Bates has seconded. Would you like to speak to your motion, Mr. Karen?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The cover sheet that you have is basically a roll-up of the subsequent sheets, okay? One for each department. The columns in green, I think that's green, right?
Yes.
Okay. The columns in green represent the reductions that I'm proposing. If we can go to the second page, which is Public Works, I'll run through this relatively quickly. You'll note that the far right column has an explanation, a rationale for the proposed adjustment. In Public Works, the rationale for all of them except for one is based on looking at past spending and weighing it against the requested increase. And what I did was look at year-to-date totals, adjusted that for what would be projected for the full year, and then looking at last year's actuals, and then coming up with a number in the column that's just to the right of the green column as to what I think is a reasonable total. The adjustment's in green. The result of that adjustment is in the column to the right. Now, in Public Works, there's one line, and that is for painting and I think that's repair, that I increased. Now, the reason I increased it, first of all, if you look at that line, and that line is 54,550 under 43,111. In '09, the actuals were 16,000. This year, year-to-date, they were roughly 6. The request was for 81. So I had figured somewhere in between there at 10 would be reasonable. And then I added 40,000 because, as you'll see later on in CIP, the part of this motion is to zero out the request for a $210,000 10-wheel truck and instead replace the body at 40,000. Anybody have any questions on?
You can't do that.
Okay.
You are in debate mode.
All right. I think that's it on the Public Works. The next page is the police budget. That represents a total reduction from the current year of 1.78% or 10,900. All of the lines, as you can see, just as we mentioned in the prior sheet, the adjustments, I mean, some of them are as little as $200, are based on my assessment of the current spending rate and the actuals from the year before. Except for the first item at the top, 42101-45260, which is the photocopier contract, was budgeted for $6,000, but this past Monday night, the selectmen approved a contract of $5121. So I adjusted that accordingly. The third page is the fire department budget. Now, again, the majority of the adjustments are based on my assessment of past expenses versus the requested increase. But at the top, there's an adjustment there to call firefighter wages, not the duty guys, but the incident guys, okay? I'm proposing a reduction of 50% of that line for this reason. It's no secret to many members of the committee that it's always stuck in my craw that we have a procedure or a policy here where we send out a call to all our call firefighters regardless of the severity of a call. It could be a fender bender, it could be a fire-alarm fire. That's bugged me for years, and I can't believe that every fire department in the country is operating this way. There's got to be a more efficient way to make use of our call guys. And as such, I'm hoping that a reduction of 50% in that line, again, not our call duty guys, but our incident guys, is gonna help prompt an improvement or a streamlining in the way that that procedure is enacted. Other than that, again, small adjustments based on my assessment of actuals and my assessment of the current year-to-date expenditures. The next page, Parks and Recreation, same thing. There are 7 lines there I've made minor adjustments to, again, based on year-to-date expenditures versus actuals. Some of these stand out quite a bit. One of them, pool operations. We're at $10,000 this year, and the pool season's over. Pool season's done. And we're at $12,000 in actuals for '09. I did not feel that the request for 34 and the subsequent adjustment by selectmen to 27,000 was warranted based on past expenditures. So I'm proposing 15,000, which is still a sizable increase over the average of the last 2 years. And keeping in mind that money is coming from I think it's the Public Works budget, to Parks and Rec to repair Roy Pool, I felt these adjustments were defensible. Library, next page. There are 11 lines there. I'm moving to increase all of those lines back up beyond the selectmen's recommended number to the department head's request. Now, we're only talking about a total of 27,000. I feel it's important for a couple of reasons on the library. Number one, they have historically come to us with very excellently worked budgets with very little, if any, padding, number one. But more importantly, number two, is that I was very impressed with the information that we were provided on October 13th by the library as to the increase in usage that's going on over there. And a lot of it is directly related to the current economy. People coming in looking for jobs, using computers. And in my assessment, their request was not unreasonable. And I think that the library, considering the current economic times, can use the extra 27,000. So part of my motion is to increase all 11 of these lines. And keep in mind, the lines on these sheets are not all the lines in these departments. They're the lines that I'm adjusting, because otherwise, I was gonna have 30 pages to print. So that's what I'm proposing on the library. Administration, again, 90% of the adjustments here are based on my assessment of past remodeling The first line up here on elections, you know, we had 3 elections this year, and we spent $3,600, $2,900 the year before, 6,000, well, we've only got 1 election coming up next year, I think was excessive. So I'm proposing 4,000, which is probably still excessive, but should be more than enough considering we've only got 1 election. The only other thing in here that would probably stand out is 41,500, 48440 in finance, furniture and fixtures. There's a request there, originally it was 20,000, selectmen adjusted it to 17. That is for what we were described, or what we were told about, doing some remodeling upstairs so that the 2 departments, I guess it's admin and finance, who service the public coming in over the counters, it saves them time. They all would work together, so somebody doesn't have to get up and walk from one room to another. Well, that's nice, but personally, I wouldn't support spending 17,000 for that this year. We're doing business just fine as it is. I don't think we need to spend that money. And again, the rest is based on my assessment of current year and past year expenditures versus the request, whether I feel they were justified or not. And if I didn't, I propose a number there. Now lastly, here we come to the big one. Fortunately, special articles, of course, is not part of this, and overall, the taxpayers will benefit by the special articles portion of the overall town budget, because this year we don't have a $360,000 land purchase, okay? Keeping that in mind, I went through CIP, and the first thing here, again, is the road plan. So let me explain to you what we've got here. Department head requested $2.5 million. The selectmen took $1 million off of that. So we were looking at $1.5 million. Last year, the budget committee approved $750,000. That subsequently got adjusted with extra monies that were garnered from motions made at the deliberative. I'm looking to adjust this down $500,000 for a total of $1 million on the road plan, keeping in mind what we approved last year, and also keeping in mind that the DPW budget, which I'm not proposing to adjust these lines, has another 350 some odd thousand in it for resurfacing and patching, coal patching, and road repairs. So basically, we're really looking at a total road plan of $1.3 million, $1.4 million. So I don't find it's unreasonable at all to reduce the request by $500,000 and sets the CIP amount at $1 million, considering we have another 350, 400,000 in the operating budget for DPW for the same thing, or close to it. The next line I reduced is 50,000 for a study for the intersection of Elm and Pleasant. That's nice to do a study, but I don't want to spend money for that this year. Now we get into vehicles. We have 102,000, or actually, yeah, roughly 102,000 for 3 police cars. I'm a pretty fair mechanic. Maybe John will back me up on this, but our cars, thank you. This is not 1979 or the early 80s. Our cars, I have no doubt, can withstand another 30,000 miles and get 100 or 110,000 out of our police cruisers. These are not your grandfather's Crown Vics. These are police package cars. 110,000 miles on a car is not unreasonable. Thank you, Jen. And I would like to see the schedule that we've been on of replacing 3 cars every year, 3 cars every year. They've got 80, 90, 95,000, 100,000 miles on them, and they're taken out of service. I think we can push this whole schedule back 1 year. Next year, get back, take the cars we were going to replace this year, replace them next year. Take the cars we're going to replace next year, replace them the year after. Just back the whole schedule up, and not necessarily follow the recommendations of the National whatever association or the companies that manufacture cruisers that recommend that they're replaced. I think we can do this year, our cars at 70, 80,000 miles, we can get another year out of them. So I'm recommending that we zero out that line. Okay, the next one is a little over $500,000, $550,000 for a new fire tanker pumper. Over the last couple of meetings, I've tried to find ways to defer or spread out the cost of this tanker pumper to ease or eliminate a $500,000 hit on the taxpayers. I talked about maybe using EMS funds, maybe going forward with a special article to garner some of this money, maybe half of what's left. I guess we've got $143,000 already in capital reserve for it, leave a balance of another 400. Perhaps an article to put 200,000 in capital in reserve for this year, and another 200,000 next year. We could buy that engine next year. We're talking about replacing a vehicle that's been out of service since spring. We apparently are getting by without this truck. So the other option I considered is that, well, we can replace the pump housing on it for $60,000, or we could spend $170 and refurbish the entire truck and get another 5 to 10 years out of it. But the problem with doing that is that we'd have to put $170,000 back in the fire department budget, and that means that the money does not necessarily have to be spent for that. It's a bottom line budget. So to me, we'd take this $500,000 out of this CIP, and we either put a special article out on the warrant for $200,000 more for capital reserve. We do the same thing next year, and then we buy the truck next year. We spread this cost out over a couple years. Unless, of course, it would be the preference of the chief to refurbish the one he's got. But in any case, for the purposes of my motion, I'm saying there's no way I'm going to support a $550,000 hit on a truck we've been without for months and months and months. And how much longer would it be by the time this new truck would actually arrive? We're getting by without, let's either do the special warrant articles or refurbish the one we got. But I'm not supporting buying a brand new one this year. The last one, the second to last, I've already touched on this. $214,000 for a 10-wheeler. I've added $40,000 to the DPW budget to fix that 10-wheeler we've got. I've heard numerous meetings, this truck is running fine, other than the fact that the body is shot and can be replaced for $40,000. I'd rather do that. Sure, the truck may not be running fine tomorrow. We may get hit by an asteroid tomorrow. But right now, I'd rather spend $40,000 on behalf of the taxpayers to keep that truck on the road and save $170,000. And the last one, of course, is the Packer. That's the solid waste vehicle. My understanding is that we've got 2 on the road, and that it's the backup truck that we've got that's down. This year, we needed Pennard to back us up, I think I was told 1 day, and they did it at no charge. I'd like to have a backup solid waste vehicle to back up the 2 we've got on the road. Almost $250,000? No. I'd rather see if we can get by with Pennard this year. And next year, we'll get that, because we won't have to buy a 10-wheeler next year. That's my motion. Those are the details. I guess I have nothing further to add. I think, other than to say I think this budget works. It's not a 10% reduction over the current, but it's 8 some odd. And it's close. I think it's reasonable, it's doable. The important thing to point out too is that this motion of mine lays nobody off. We keep all our personnel to drive the truck. I mean, it's one thing to buy a new truck and not have anybody to drive it. I'd rather keep the people employed, which to me translates into maintaining the services, and to do so at a cost that's affordable and keeping the current condition of our constituents' wallets in mind.
Before I recognize Mr. Bates to speak on his second, I need to bring us to the fire page, and for the purposes of this particular motion, budgets are not created using pennies. So I am going to adjust 42201-42200, which is FICA under fire, up to a reduction of 2507 and take the pennies off of Medicare,
I missed that, sorry.
take the pennies off of unemployment compensation, and take the pennies off of workers' compensation. That'll make it balance from there, okay? If that's so agreeable by the committee.
Yeah, I
What
missed it.
does that do to the bottom?
If you look at the pennies, nothing changes. You just zero out the pennies, and the total stays at 108,035.
Okay.
108,035.
You're on fire.
Okay, without, Mr. Bates, would you like to speak to your second?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. I too, like Guy, had a specific proposal I was going to make, but I'm speaking to my second today because although, as Guy said, this does not track to a 10% level, I believe it's based on what I'm reviewing, although some of the changes do not line up with the ones I've made. And while I probably wouldn't have made the same changes as Guy has proposed, I believe it represents to the committee a reasonable and, most importantly, proportional way to put forward an austere budget, which is in keeping what we all talked about back in May. And so, to the CIP side of things at the very end of the page, again, I believe, while I don't share the same thinking as Guy on some of these CIP changes, what I do believe is in a very weak economy with taxpayers hurting, I think this really does represent a way forward that, again, is looking at things in a very innovative way, that's proportional and reasonable, and probably most importantly, to Guy's point, we're retaining the workers to provide services and to be here when we need them. So in a down economy, we have to make things work, live within a budget, make things work, and work hard to do that. We've retained the staff to do that. So that's an overall, Mr. Chair. Like I said, this doesn't represent the changes that I had in mind, but it's close enough, and it tracks very much with an austere budget, which the whole committee spoke to back in May, and so that's why I second and I support it.
Thank you. I have Mr. Gordon on the list. Please speak. And if you would like to speak before, just try to get my attention if I'm not looking. I'm still trying to balance the actual number. I'm off by a little bit, but I'm sure that's because I've missed something and I'm gonna go check it again. Mr. Gordon?
Based upon reviewing this and considering my opening statements at the beginning of the meeting, I believe what Mr. Karen brought forward fits with keeping the tax rate down and keeping the services up, keeping at least the resources to do them, and being, I think this fits as a very good budget, and the fact that the lines are so large, it's basically on a departmental basis. Within the departments, the money can be moved around however see fit by the department heads and the selectmen. So I think it is a budget that we should embrace, and I'm all for it. Thank you.
Just a quick comment.
That's okay. Go ahead, Guy.
I just want to point out something I forgot to mention also. The reduction I proposed versus our starting number is a reduction of is that a 5 or a 6?
6.
That's a 6,
6.36.
6.36. But when you factor in another aspect of impact to the taxpayers, which is special articles, and we haven't got a land purchase, ultimately, when you include the special articles, we're actually affecting a reduction of 8.66 to the current budget, because fortunately, we haven't got a land purchase this year.
Mr. Fletcher?
So I followed Guy through what he did, and I think it's a pretty good recommendation to us. But I do have a problem with a couple areas in what he said, and one of them is that call firefighter line. And it kinda upsets me that he would think that you're going to take care of the calls in the town of Goffstown or any other town in the state of New Hampshire where there's not a full-time force, and have the personnel to do the job. And I say that because you don't know at any time there's a call, who's gonna show up. And having worked under that situation for many years, I know the ramifications of it. And I must point out to you that in the state of New Hampshire, the last figures I saw, there was 1,000 full-time firefighters, but not all of them work around the clock in the towns that we live in. The cities, they do, but many towns like Goffstown, they work, 8 to 12 hours a day, and they all go home, and you close the doors and you lock it. And it comes back to me of a town in this state where they do the same thing as we do, and one night, nobody showed up. So, the amount of people you have answering calls and coming to the station is a criteria of being able to provide the emergency services after hours when you lock up the station. Now, there's 3 stations in the town of Goffstown, so that we used to operate with 75 call people. And there was times when we couldn't get more than 1 or 2 trucks out of any station. And depending on the type of call, depending on what happened, it might be an accident for a car, but it also might be a three-alarm structure fire. And that's very, very hairy when it comes to what we're trying to do in Goffstown. If you take them away, you lead to more full-time people, it's gonna cost you more money.
Okay.
And in the state of New Hampshire, again, I might say, roughly 1,000 full-time full-time firefighters versus, 400, 500 call, and that's 300 and something towns, and that's how they're operating, many of them. And the only way they can operate is to put the call out, and everybody's gonna respond. Now, there is one way of controlling the cost, and that's when you don't need them, have somebody there that sends them home. Make sure the call gets answered and the rest of them go home, so you don't pay them 2 hours instead of 1,
No,
Now.
I have a list. This is debate mode, not
The
discussion.
second thing is that I think that the 40,000 to put the body on the dump truck is very reasonable, and I think that should be the way we go. I say that because these are big diesel automatics and what have you. Now, they break down, but they can be fixed. When it comes to the fire trucks are usually, a 20-year lifespan as a first-run piece of equipment in a town like Goffstown. It's probably getting a little bit less now, but, a number of years ago, that was the figure. And we used to have gas jobs. We went to diesel automatics because of the lifespan of them. So, to fix the pump, and I guess that's probably the basic part of that. There may be a few things that need updated, I don't know. So that's probably a reasonable figure. That's the 60,000 I've heard. I'm not sure, is that a concrete figure or not, but I think, you're getting close to it. I think that when you repair that truck, or that bumper, it's a diesel, it's automatic, that when the lifespan of it gets beyond the 20 years, you know, it usually, something like that gets moved back as a second-run piece. However, the other problem there is that there's a tanker that needs to be replaced, and they're trying to combine the two. Whether that's right or wrong, I can't be the judge of that. I don't think that I'd wanna do it that way, because I think we have some backcountry roads where it's gonna travel, and there's bridges, and I don't know what the weight's gonna be. I mean, is it going to be able to maneuver them places? I know we used to say no when we used to have 2 tankers. But I'm not there now, I don't know. Things have changed, roads have been rebuilt, bridges have been rebuilt. There is some old bridges still there. I don't know if they'll handle that type of weight or not, but, you know, it's, and if you put all your eggs in one basket sometimes.
Thank you, Mr. Fletcher. As a point of order, I'm gonna bring about, as I said, the first time, we're gonna do a little training session. And when I hear someone say something, well, I agree with this or don't agree with this, you have to know that we are in a method where if you want to offer an amendment, you can, okay? We have a very, very large, motion, okay? So if any, you don't have to, in order for the rules, you don't have to amend everything. If there was a particular line item you didn't like, we could offer an amendment. Then what happens is we go back, unfortunately, and the whole thing is there, but we can only amend it one more time, but we have to act on the whole thing to amend it, then we can go back and do amendments, and is it a point of order, Scott, or do you wanna put on a list?
It's a comment that deals directly with this, which may help us. If you indulge me for 15 seconds, could we maybe go through it by department, you know, each subsection, and then take a vote on that? It'll allow for discussion on individual items, as Dick Fletcher just said, and you'll still get to the bottom number. We'll take probably 8 votes, and that will then wrap it up.
I will take that as a point of order,
Okay.
okay? As we do our job in a motion, it is a motion. There's no way I can, as a motion on the table, dissect it. We'd have to have an amendment that kind of pulls it apart, and then we talk about one piece. And then another amendment that puts another piece in and talk about it, because the motion's on the table. Okay, the entire thing, it's not by department, it's the entire, and I have to believe that the person who made the motion and the person who seconded it, there was a reason behind them to do that. So makes it a little more difficult and challenging administratively, but to do that, we can't. Now, if you'd like to raise your hand and talk about certain things, we can do that, but we can't dissect it and only vote on pieces of it. Mr. Karen, you had your hand up, then I'm gonna go to Jen.
Yeah, I had,
And Dick, and Mr. Burt.
you were just mentioning amendments.
Yes.
If I were to wish to alter a portion of my motion,
Mhm.
would that have to be done through an amendment?
Yes.
Or it would?
Because as a point of order, that is, the motion is on the table, okay? The only way we can kinda like go backwards is to, and we've done it before, the person who seconds it, by the will of the committee, if they would like to take it off the table, the person who seconded it may remove their second, and then you can remove the motion, and then we can do it all again. Otherwise than that, we just do it via amendment.
Okay, I don't want to remove the motion.
Okay?
I have great respect for Chief Fletcher and what he had to say about my proposed reduction.
Are you gonna propose an amendment? Before you do, I'd like to administratively correct the motion that's on the floor. Remember I said I would do some
Oh, yeah.
math and make sure it's okay? I am $200 off. If you guys go to the sub-page called Police, you'll see the total on the bottom for the police communications is $10,940. That addition is correct, okay? On the front page, where the motion totaled up to $1,935,518, I'm missing $200, and I've narrowed it down to police communications. Is there a missing line to your motion, or should the total be reduced by $200, your motion? You see where it says $11,140 on the front tabulation page? On police communications?
Yes.
That does not match 10,940 on the detail page, so
You
we're
know-
either missing $200 in that detail line, or the total is off by a little bit.
This is the sheet you sent out last night, and
Yep.
I noticed that the numbers on the front sheet
Yep.
and the MS tab don't match.
Okay,
So I'm suspecting it's in this cover and not, the error is in this cover sheet. I mean, I know you put it together, but
it doesn't go in that direction. Because the 11,140, what I sent out what it did was sent numbers from the cover sheet and the BOS column and the BC column to the MS7, not the other way around. So I'm not sure. So, the BC column is calculated from the BC adjustment column. So you're looking for 687,834.
yes.
Then the BC total is 687,634, and that's where the math problem would be
Okay.
in here. So if we change that, the 8, if you look at the column on the front page
Mhm.
that has the green vertical bar, okay? If you go to 42104, it says the BC net amount would be 687,634. The motion should reflect it should be 687,834.
Right.
Then that means the BC adjustment would be 10,940, and the net amount of the motion would be $1,935,318.
Correct.
Yeah, I'm not gonna void the whole motion because of the math, because we said we would look at it, okay? Without objection, we'll go forward from there. So the amount we are talking about, okay, there was a motion to reduce the Board of Selectmen's number by 1 million, or the number we started tonight with, by 1,935,318, as detailed on this sheet that you all have before you. Guy, you have the floor? Then I have Jen, Dick, and John Burt,
Okay,
and Christie.
let me ask you a question then. If,
Point of order.
if the motion was to pass,
Yes,
can items be revisited?
yes.
Okay. Then,
Additional motions could be made. And this is the one thing, as soon as you made the big motion, I started lamenting that we didn't talk on Tuesday, because it has usually been, what we've done in the past, is if someone made a motion on a certain line and it passed, then someone else wasn't allowed to come back and make another motion on the same line. Because that was counterproductive, counterintuitive. It didn't make sense. We either vote yes or no. Why would two people can completely hold up the process by making a motion and seconding it, and that's not where we want to go. So the intent was to not go to the same line twice. Let me ask the committee this. This is where our rules come in. I didn't explain it on Tuesday. Is it the will of this committee to continue with a motion, and if it goes through and passes as is, that the entire budget is still open for review, using the rules we just talked about? So, if this happens to pass and anyone wanted to make a particular motion on a particular line item, it would be so allowed, even though we took action on that line item in this motion. That way, we now are good with that, okay? But if anyone would make a motion on a line item that was in here, if this were to pass, it could only be done once, okay? Meaning, go to the first page, go to the first line. The first line is 41950-55320, cemetery operations maintenance charges. This motion has a proposed reduction of $5,100 to it. If the entire package passes and someone would want to make a motion against that account number, this committee would allow it. You would allow me to allow it once. So if someone says, no, I want that number to be either more or less, we take it, we vote on it. If it passes, no one else can make another adjustment to that particular line item. Do we understand it?
I understand, I agree. I am in
Thank you.
agreement that that would be a good way to proceed.
Okay.
Because of, I
The-
know
the-
Scott has input and there's other.
I can see what would happen here when I mentioned amendments and making amendments. I can see us getting into an administrative nightmare, okay? But I want the will of the committee to go forward on that rule. Are there any objections?
So can,
Yes, Dick?
so if somebody can make an amendment right now, can they make an amendment later to this? Have you-
Later.
I'm looking.
I say,
I'm-
I say we should.
You would like to make an amendment within this one, as we explained we could do on Tuesday. Would that then make that particular line item, then it would make that particular line item unavailable if we passed it? For
No,
a further
no, no.
amendment?
No.
Well, what I'm saying is, okay, I mean, what I'm trying to do is, once the first one hits, okay? And someone else wants to make one, I can't stop it. We've set the precedent, okay? We either amend this whole thing to where we go, and then pass it, and when we come over, everything's still open. Is that your will? Is that the will of the committee now?
That's, yes.
Yes.
I mean, that's
Is
what
there are there any objections? Okay, then we go by the rules we set on Tuesday. This is amendable now. If it passes, the entire budget is still open for review. Every line, okay?
Once.
Only once. That'll be the new rules once we get through this. Remember how I said if we make a rule, we have to wait till, we can't do it midstream? This would be one of those. We let this go the way we talked about it. If it passes, then you are able to go back to any line, anywhere in the budget, and we continue the process. Point of inquiry?
Yes.
Yes?
Just so I understand 100%.
Mhm.
For example, if line 55320, cemetery operation maintenance charge, it's a reduction of 5,100. If somebody brings a motion and say, I want it at $5,150,
Mhm.
we vote on it, and then it's a done deal. We can't go back.
If this motion were to pass. Yes,
Okay,
because you can make that modification now within the main motion as an amendment. And if that passed, you still get another whack at it if it passes.
Okay.
On the opposite side, if this doesn't pass, it's a moot point. Everything still gets their first shot. So no matter whether it passes or not, everything's open after we do this. So we may now proceed with the list and any amendments if you'd like to offer it. I have Guy, Jen, Dick, John Burt, and Christie on my list for the main motion. Mr. Karen?
I have no amendments or changes to offer to my original motion.
Okay. Jen?
I have a motion to amend on the library budget. Line item 71100.
Okay, if you would help me out for a moment.
711,
Actually, I'm sorry, the total for library operations, so
Is there a particular line item? Because don't forget, you're amending this. And unlike a motion where you can go and just hit something off the bottom, unfortunately, we have something here that's so detailed, we'd wanna stick with that, because otherwise it's gonna make it extremely difficult. Do you have a?
I think the most appropriate place then would be, it's hard, yeah, because it's not actually on this line, so.
Just to help us out, what is your sum certain that you're looking to do, Jen?
I think I found my line, actually,
Okay.
but it's not on
It's okay.
guys. 47400, which would be books and publications.
47440, yes.
My motion to amend is to raise, what you see as guys, number here at $26,988, but I would be looking at that particular line, raising it to $41,988, so adding $15,000 to line item 47400. I think you recall, on Saturday, that the Okay.
Okay, I just have to find out what your motion is
Yep,
at the
sure.
moment.
Mhm.
You wanna increase
Yes.
45501, 47400,
Yes,
which is for books and publications.
yes.
Currently, we accepted a detailed budget of 39,126.
Mhm.
And you wanna add 15,000 to that.
Which now I have to redo my math.
And you wanna make that 54,126,
Yes.
which is an additional 15,000.
Mhm.
Is there a second to that motion?
Second?
It's been, do you all understand what the amendment is? Okay. What this does is, increase that line from 39,126 to 54,126. It gets added into, the list is hereby suspended, and I am creating a new list with Jen first, and Mr. Bates second. Jen, can you speak to your motion, please?
Yes, so if you recall the Saturday that the library presented to us, they did, I agree with Guy, they came through with a very bare bones budget. I think that they were extremely fiscally responsible. They did express to all of us that their level of service, the demands on their level of service has increased, their demands for materials has increased, yet they didn't have the financial resources to make that happen. Due to the economy, people are certainly looking to the library to take up materials, to read newspapers, to do research, to help them find jobs, to use the computers there to help communicate with their families because they don't have these services at home any longer. I think it's extremely important that we continue providing as much as we can to the families and community members that are heavily hit by the economy right now by providing more service. I did also ask at that time of the library what they would do with more money, and they said that they would certainly look to provide more periodicals, more publications to the public, to help them, so. That's why I bring this motion to you.
Mr. Bates?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would only just reiterate what Jen just said and say, you know, we've heard a lot of stuff about big economic statistics and numbers and national this and federal budget that and state budget stuff that John's brought to our attention. When we boil it down to the town level, other big things aside, what can we do right here, right now, in this town to affect better outcomes that connect with an economy here in Goffstown? This is it, right here. We can hope that John and the other John and others up in Concord are gonna do the right thing and help out the situation, and we can only hope that the federal folks will do the same. But this is what we all can do right here, right now, to help some people that are in real trouble and are trying to do the right thing to turn their lives around and obviously help the economy of the town. So that's why I speak to the sector. Thank you.
Christie? And as a point of order, we're not at the moment talking about anything else but this amendment, okay? Got you on a list.
And I just want to be clear on the amendment. Are we, with Jen's adding the 15,000 increase, is that on the original library budget?
Yes.
Or Guy's additional 26,000 to the budget?
As a point of clarification, the motion before you is to net add another 15,000 to the current motion on the table.
To
It does
Guy's.
not, yes, that's the current motion on the table. So basically, the library budget, when Mr. Karen made the proposal, was an additional 26,988. This would be an addition of 15,000 from that to be a total of 41,988. But what is on the floor right now for debate is that 15,000 additional in 47400. That is it. That's all we're talking about. Okay? because the main motion is still there, but it's hibernating, it's sleeping. We're talking about whether or not we want to add this 15,000 to this motion or not. That's
Okay.
all we're gonna do.
Thank you.
So when we take the vote, we're gonna say, do we wanna add the 15,000 to the main motion, or not add the 15,000 to the main motion? Okay? Mr. Burt, then I have Mr. Gordon on the list.
So I can say if I support or not support, or does that have
Yes.
to be a question, or?
No, you, this is debate, you do whatever you want. You wanna support this, you tell everybody you wanna support. If you don't wanna support, that's okay too. You can ask a question, but nobody may answer.
Okay.
On the amendment.
Yes.
Okay.
I agree with what Bill and Jen say, but I do not support the increase, and the reason why, but I do totally understand why we need those books. What I would do is stick to the original budget, what Guy presented, and what I was gonna bring up was that I feel they should use, instead of hiring these employees, you know, because that's what this is. And after the end of the year, if you have an employee, you spend that money, there's nothing left. But if they took this money, this $26,988 increase that Guy has suggested here, they could buy those books and go to a few volunteers at the library. So I feel we should stick with the 26,988, maybe change some of the numbers around so they can get the books that Jen and Bill suggest, which I think are very important. So I think at this point, I would not support the increase.
Thank you. Bill? Gordon?
Diane, the head librarian, asked for roughly $39,000, and the selectmen did not change that number, and Guy did not affect that number. And I believe that adding 15,000, although there's a lot of goodness to it, is too much at this point. As it is a bottom line budget, what we're sending over to the library, if we were to pass this as it stands, they've got $27,000 to move around basically as they please. And I think that was quite generous. And I don't think we should, I'd like to see more go in there, but it's the economy, thank you.
Further discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, we will take our first vote on motions tonight outside of starting the number. All right, before you is a motion to amend the main motion. All we're saying here, as I explained before, is there's a motion on the floor to add 15,000 more to the main motion for the library budget. If you respond yes, we will then talk to the main motion again with the higher number. If you say no and that wins, we will go back to the main motion as it was presented. Do you all understand the question before you? Okay, those in favor of adding in another 15,000 to the library signify by raising your hand. 1, 2. That would be the presenters, Jen and Bill Bates. Those opposed? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Abstained. 11, 12, 13. Who did I miss? Okay, roll call. You ready? Bill Gordon?
No.
Kathy?
No.
Christie?
No.
Dick?
No.
Guy?
No.
Ivan?
No.
John Burt?
No.
John Dillon?
No.
John Heichel?
No.
Paul?
No.
Scott?
Abstain.
Got it. The vote is 2 yeses, 11 noes, 1 abstention. The motion does not pass. We are back to the original main motion as presented I have 3 people on the list. I have Dick, John Burt, and Christie. Mr. Fletcher, you have the floor.
I wanna make a amendment to that fire department budget,
Okay?
line 10-42201, 41170. And that's the call firefighter. That's pay for the incidents that happen. At this present time, it shows that.
Well, hang on, before you do that, I need to go through the motion, okay, before we talk about it. The way I understand the motion, Dick, is it the entire $40,426 amendment?
To what was requested.
To what was requested? Okay, as a point of order, I need to ask the original main motioner, there are a lot of ancillary figures, including FICA, Medicare, unemployment, and workers' compensation, that is normally associated with salaries. Were all of those numbers in your original calculation based on the reduction to the call firefighter wages?
They were, and they'll have to be included.
Okay.
Yep.
So,
All of
the
those.
way the motion we have, whenever we've dealt with salaries, we have always dealt
Yep.
with and the ancillary costs to go with it. So if you give me a moment, Dick, I'm gonna get an actual number here.
I've got a spreadsheet, Dan, if you want me to give it to you right now.
Sure.
Okay. You want a total?
Yep.
Okay, it changes the total reduction from 108.
No, can I just get the motion? 2, 3, 4, it's the 5 numbers, the top 5 numbers.
Right?
I just need the total of those top 5 numbers.
Oh, the total of those top, okay.
Yes.
Probably do it faster than me now.
Maybe about 48, 49. If you just highlight them and look in the bottom right-hand corner,
Kidding.
it'll give you a total.
155,810.
No. Oh, that would be the actual budget. Okay, hang on. That'll
You
work
want
from
the
there.
total of, oh, I see.
DC, 155,810? Okay.
40.
And the original budget was
40.
You could then have your argument.
96, 110, 143, 144.
$110.
You're looking for a total of,
Highlight the selectmen column, the first 5 numbers.
yeah, okay,
And what do you get?
155,810.
That's the 155.
That was for 40,000 though, right?
Okay, now if you highlight
Yeah.
the resulting adjusted 2011 budget, what would that say?
That would be 110,622.
Okay, what I have is an additional $45,188.
That is correct.
Okay. The motion on the floor is to adjust the call firefighter wages and the ancillary benefits and employment taxes that were adjusted in the original motion. That total is $45,188. Do I have a second to the motion?
I'll second it.
I heard Christie.
That's for Dick's, right?
It's the motion that Dick just made. Dick, could you speak to your motion, please?
Yeah, I look at it now, and I see they spent 72,000 this year already. Which, when you look at the end of the year, it's gonna come out pretty much $80,000. So I think that's really what they need, and I think it's very important, that part of it, to reinstate it. And I think, the town and the people in the community will benefit in many ways from it. They need to be able to operate the way they are operating, and when you close the doors and everybody goes home, you don't know what's there, and you gotta rely on everybody to be able to answer the alarms. I say that from experience, and I know what happens. I do realize that there's a bottom line here. But I think that's kind of a heavy cut looking through this budget. I had gone through the fire department's budget and all of them. And I pretty much decided that I was gonna support what the selectmen had submitted to us, and I think, that needs to be restored.
Christie, you speak to your second, please?
I'll agree with
sticks argument. I think, on-call firefighters help keep our budget lower by not having 24/7 firefighters, and we should restore that money.
Mr. Gordon?
I'd like to reiterate what Guy said when he made the original motion, that this was putting the stake in the ground to say, work on the policies and procedures around the utilization of call firefighters. And I would urge you to vote against this amendment.
Guy?
I agree with what you just said, Bill, and the thing is, I have great respect for Chief Fletcher as well. Maybe, I still haven't, I may support this motion only because maybe this discussion has stuck a stake in the ground. If the chief feels it's that detrimental, that maybe we've sent a message that we need to review. Yeah, I know. Like I said, I'm not sure if I'm going to support this or not, but kind of hard to argue with the chief. On the other hand, it's kind of hard to argue with the fact that I think it could be done much more efficiently, but.
Okay, Chair reserves the right to speak as well. I have my name on the list. I have Mr. Byrd on the list. Of all of those that I looked at, this is the one that jumped out at me the most, and I'm saying, gee, this bothered me. I'm not sure whether I would have made a motion to bring it all the way back to what the selectmen had done, because I still look at the actuals and everything else. If there were an amendment to this amendment that brought it down a little bit, I could still support it, but I don't think I can support whacking it all the way down and cutting it in half. That was a little too much. So when the chair calls for a vote, I'm going to vote in the affirmative. Mr. Burt?
I will be voting no, and the reason is, I think what Guy presented for his arguments, and also Mr. Gordon, are very valid. And I was looking on the website of the volunteer fire departments across the country, and it's 78% of the nation runs on volunteer fire department. Chief O'Brien, when I brought that to his attention, because he said he couldn't get anybody, if I understood right, that he couldn't get anybody to come if he wasn't paying them. And once I pointed out, I said 50% originally, and I said, was it just for the money? And he said, oh, no, absolutely, they would come. And I really feel, I talked to some volunteer fire departments, Representative Antos from Epping, and they are all volunteer over there. He was a volunteer, and he says there's plenty of volunteers. So I feel by staying with this 40,000 reduction, what it would do is it would force the chief to change the policies and also look at bringing some volunteers back to this town, which I think we should be working toward. So I will be voting no, because I think we could do it with volunteers.
Scott?
I just want to make sure, because I that Epping, you said, John, that they are not getting paid, they're strictly volunteer, no pay?
Don't answer that.
Okay.
It's debate mode.
Debate mode, I would just like to know rock solid that that's the case before we would vote I guess in the negative on this. That line does also include a lot of training for the call firefighters as well, so I just wanted you to point that out. And we do rely heavily on call firefighters in this community to provide the service around the clock.
And no one else had their hand up yet, so I'm going to speak again, and then I'll go to Dick, because I just saw his hand. One of the things that I do know, and I'm going to conjecture, because I don't know for a fact, but I'm going to conjecture that if there are a lot of volunteer firefighters out, the pure volunteer, we are amassing rural volunteers with Goffstown, which is actually a town that is larger than, we have 13 cities in New Hampshire, and Goffstown is bigger than I think half of them. So if you want to think of that way, I'm not sure I like the way the system works right now. I've watched it vacillate over the last number of years, over a lot of different chiefs, we were talking about almost losing our call firefighter force. When we talk about policies and a force to change the policies, I'm trying to think about how could I possibly do that if I was the fire chief? Does that mean I now have to have people who are designated, okay, on this day, you're gonna respond if the tone goes out? Or does that mean we're gonna have to buy more equipment so that it only turns out certain folks, and if those certain folks don't show up, then we tone other certain folks to see if they show up? And if we do that, we've lost the precious time of what firefighters are all about. That's what's kind of worrying me, and I'm looking at the total dollars that is in the motion, and it's brought it down quite a bit. And when I look at the $45,000, and then I look at the, we talked about insurance rates and different things like that, I'm not quite sure I'm ready to take the 40,000 because I don't have anybody I can ask the question to right now about insurance rates and what would happen if we didn't have that. That's why I am supporting this. Dick, you're back up.
I'd just like to make it clear that there's two types of firefighters, which aren't full-time, and there's paid on call, and there's call firefighters, volunteers. Volunteer firefighters work for nothing.
That's right.
But they still get paid. They got to train. They got to be able to run equipment. They still get paid something. When the calls come in, a lot of them are volunteer. Now, some people train for nothing in some departments. When you look across the country, there's a lot of volunteer. They don't get paid for nothing. But there's also a lot of call firefighters. Paid call firefighters. So there's two categories, and don't confuse them. There's paid on call and there's volunteers.
Thank you, Dick. John?
Once again, I'm still gonna vote no on this. What I would suggest is that we all vote no, and hopefully we can revisit this next Tuesday with a smaller amount if that's what the board sees. I think increasing it $40,000 is a little too much. Representative Antos also talked to me in length about volunteer fire departments. He said there are cities the size of Manchester that are 100% volunteer. I do not know that for a fact. That's what the representative told me, and I believe that that is true. Once again, the numbers that I have seen on this website for volunteer fire departments is 78% are volunteer. Now, does that mean they're on-call volunteer? I do not know, but I think we should all vote no, and next Tuesday, I believe the chair has said that we can revisit this number, we just cannot revisit it tonight. So, once again, I'm no.
As a clarification, we can revisit it tonight.
Oh.
We can revisit it, if there's time tonight, and we wanna revisit, that's okay. Guy?
Out of respect for the chief and considering the fact that he has no dog in this fight, he's been the chief, he feels it's a reduction here of this size would cost us money elsewhere. I'm gonna respect his opinion and I'm gonna support his motion, or his amendment.
We are discussing, debating the amendment to add $45,188 into the motion that Guy made right now. The only thing we're gonna do is vote on that $45,188. If you vote yes, we will then add that and make the reduction of the earlier main motion less, okay? But it will attribute it to those line items. And if you vote no, we won't. We'll just talk about the pristine main motion. Further discussion before I call the question?
Point of order or
Yes.
You said we couldn't revisit it on Tuesday, just.
No, we could.
Well, we could.
We can revisit it tonight, is what I'm saying. We can revisit it on Tuesday. You can revisit it
Okay. I understand.
whenever.
Thank you.
Okay? So what we agreed as a group was no matter what we do with this tonight, whether we amend anything or whether we don't, the entire budget, every line item is up for grabs once we finish this. Either way, okay? Is that clear by everyone? Okay, so what the question before you is, do you want to put $45,188 back into those four lines from the main motion? That's all we're asking about. this one particular amendment. Those in favor of adding it back in, please signify by raising your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Opposed. 1, 2, 3, 4. Abstained. Okay, obviously I can't count, maybe it's me, I'm not counting. Roll call, please. Dan, yes. Bill Bates.
No.
Bill Gordon.
No.
Kathy.
No.
Christie.
Yes.
Dick.
Yes.
Guy.
Yes.
Ivan.
Yes.
Yes.
Jen. John Burt.
No.
John Dillon.
Yes.
John Heichel.
Yes.
Paul.
Yes.
Scott.
Yes.
Okay, it's 10. I must have been counting myself. It is 10-4. We are now discussing, we're back to the main motion. The main motion, I had John Burt and then Christie. For you who are adding your stuff up right now, I'll get right to you. The I'll get right to you. What the number we are talking about currently with this amendment, okay, is a reduction of 945,100, no, that can't be right.
No, no,
No,
62.
no. Why did it do that? Hang on. 1,000,000, oh, that was the average I was reading, sorry. $1,890,330. Okay? That is now the replacement main motion. And give me a moment while I update my schedules, and I will get to your point of order, okay?
I can have my chunk.
Hang on.
Check your email, Dan.
BC adjustment equals minus 108 plus $45,188. $1,890. Oh, it's 1,890, 130. I forgot to, no. I love it when a plan doesn't come together. $62,847. That page is now $62,847 as a reduction.
Yes.
$62,847. So why am I coming up with 1,890,130? I did the 10,940. That's the $200. That went to 318. Second. Main motion, let me get back to the main motion.
We're coming up with a revised model.
Which is this. 45,188. Oh, that's because I didn't change, I didn't change the original spreadsheet from the budget column. Hang on, that's where we gotta go. 18,442. All right, that's where it was off. Your original number of 18,457,030. I'm gonna take your point of order.
Don't worry, I know you can't. work on spreadsheets and chew gum at the same time. I'm patient.
without my big,
I mean,
I
can't
wanna
even
make
say-
sure we got the right numbers, and I'm looking at this, and it's, the numbers are small. 18,457,030, and was that was correct, right?
Doesn't sound.
Because 19, I'm looking at the bottom numbers where you have oh, I'm up, sorry, that's where I got it, sorry. I did the same thing Guy did when we started. So it's 18,242,024, correct? 18, no, it's not 242, it's 642. 24, which is 1735,518, and in that, it's $1,690,330. My spreadsheet is in balance. Thank you for your patience.
Repeat that, please.
Yes, it's the same number I said, I hope it's the same number
So
I
there'll
said
be like
earlier.
25 more motions, so I won't.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
I'll put it down.
This one is right.
You can distract them.
Yeah, go ahead, distract me. 18,487,412, 18,
Can I ask a question?
Mr. Bates is in line first.
I just,
It's gotta be a reduction of $1,690,330. Is it not? Do you agree with me, Guy?
no,
Okay, what do you get? Do you get $130?
I'm just saying, to me, we're adding back in 45,188
Yes.
to the bottom line on the front page, which was 1,935,318.
Oh, yes, that's, yeah.
And I got,
Oh, that's right, I've got it wrong. Somehow, H12 minus G12, and I'm looking for your number, 18. I was grabbing your numbers here, 18,442,024, which made that 18,642,024, which made the total 1,735,518, not 1,935,000. So I got the number from the wrong place. Give me a moment. I added 200,000 rather than, thank you for keeping me on my toes. 200, thank you. Do we get $1,890,130?
yes,
That's where I was trying to get to. When you have large, complicated sheets, and that's where it's good for us to stop, so we're in the same place. My change sheet and my master sheet are now in sync. Okay, everyone, we are talking about the main motion, which is now a reduction of $1,890,130. Do I need that repeated?
Yes.
1,890,130. That's 224, that's what I got wrong. Mr. Bates, your
Yes,
point of order.
I think before we go any further, although I did step out the room for a bio break, I thought we were under the understanding we were gonna vote in its entirety on
That is
the
correct.
main motion before we started bringing up all these amendments.
That would be incorrect. As an inquiry, what we talked about was Tuesday. We said on Tuesday, we could make amendments, no more than 2 deep. When this large motion came to pass, it became apparent to me that if anyone didn't like any piece of this, because we did not yet talk about, you don't get 2 dips at the same, you don't get 2 bites from the same pie, that if we would pass it as is, then you couldn't go back and make any adjustments. So we agreed as a group that we could do that. But we then got into a quandary. The quandary was we already agreed we could make amendments. And so in order to fulfill both edicts, we agreed, I had no objections, that we could go forward making amendments to the main motion as it stands And also, when it's done, we still have the full budget to go forward to. That was what the agreement was, and that's the way I'm proceeding.
So, if someone were to, move to a vote,
Call the question.
call the question, and we all just voted on it, then we could return, based on what you just said, we
That is
could
correct.
return
That is correct.
the entire thing and then go department by department.
To make that clearer, we could not go back to the entire thing. You would go back to a motion you would want to make. We wouldn't go back to this motion, because that motion is now gone. You can make new motions.
Got it.
Okay, right now I have John Burt and Christie back on the main motion list. And then I'll put Dick on the list, unless you have a point of order. Okay. Are there any more clarifications and points of order before we proceed? We are proceeding on the main motion and discussing the main motion, which is a reduction of $1,890,130 in various accounts. That is the amended number, but that is the number that's on the table. Okay? Mr. Burt, you have the floor.
This may be a call to question, I'm not sure, but it is a question to Guy.
Okay, when you call the question, that means you want to stop debate, everyone on the list gets to speak, and then we can't speak anymore, we have to vote.
Oh, okay, then.
But in order to call a question, you cannot make debate at the same time. It's either one or the other.
Well, I have a question on Parks and Rec.
You may debate.
Oh.
He is not on the list, so I don't think you'd get an answer right now.
Okay. Well, what my question was on the equipment side. I think it's separate, but I was looking at the GL accounts, which is 66100 and 67100. And one is programs, which Guy wants to remove 2,000 additional dollars from what the selectmen wanna propose. But then he wants to leave the rec equipment, and what my question was, is he explained that the basketballs and other equipment are in dire need of repair or replacement. And I just wanted to make sure that that was not included in Guy's reduction, because I think it's important to have, good equipment. But I'm almost reading that it's separate.
Let me make it as a point of clarification.
Okay.
Because of a budget process. I'm not gonna answer the question.
Okay.
As a budget process, what you have before you is a motion that would amend a particular budget line number. Whether anything that was explained at any time during this budget process indicated what it was for is not binding. It's a line number in a budget. There may be reasons for why a reduction would be made a motion for, but as far as it goes, once it goes to the people, and then once it goes to the ballot, and once it goes back to the selectmen for enactment, it's a bottom line budget,
Yes.
okay? That's just as a point of clarification.
Okay, thank you. And another one was, I believe in the police department, we are down one officer and that they're not gonna fulfill that. That's what I understand. I know Manchester is down 40 police officers, and that's quite a bit, but they have a huge force. If another officer was to, move to another department or quit or whatever, is that a possibility to leave that open and also available, open and not fulfilled? But I guess that's a question then. I probably won't get an answer.
Mr. Chair,
I can
Alright.
put you on a list.
I'd like to call the question.
You can't do that, you have to go on a list. You're on a list.
All right, that was all, it was basically the equipment and the police officer. All right, thank you.
Dick, you have the floor?
Yeah, in the Public Works, budget, I'm looking at a line here, clothing line, it's, 10-43111, dash 44150. And,
Okay, hang on, if you can bring me there, say, 43111?
yes, on page 2.
Yeah, what's the 5 digits after?
What?
The other number, the other set of 5 numbers?
44150.
He's looking at the red book.
Oh,
Public Works, or are you someplace else? Oh, you're looking at,
I'm looking at the budget that was given us.
okay, hang on. Let me get there, if you don't mind.
The line, in '09 was 26,185, they spent 15,287.
Yep.
827.
Okay,
This year, they requested, 20, this past year, or in 10. They requested 20,000, they've only spent 12. They're requesting for this coming year, 26,000.
Mr. Fletcher,
Yeah,
the debate is on the motion. That number isn't included in the motion. Are you thinking you're gonna make an amendment?
no, I'm gonna cut it.
That'd be an amendment.
Well, that's an amendment, so if you can get.
Amendment?
Yeah, you have to amend it. It's not
Okay,
in the
I'll make an
motion.
amendment then.
It's not in the motion, so I don't know why we're discussing it. That's why I'm saying
I'll
it.
amend it,
Okay, you wanna amend, you wanna make a motion to amend?
yeah.
Okay?
Can you say the line again?
Yes. It is 43111 44150. And if you give me a moment, I need to write this down as well. 43111 44150. So you're gonna add a line to the motion. Okay?
So I wanna reduce that line to 16,185.
Okay. It is currently 26,185. You want to do 16,185, which is a reduction of $10,000.
Right.
Okay. This is clothing and uniforms. Okay, at the moment, I am. Dick has a motion on the floor to reduce 43111 44150, which is DPW clothing and uniforms, from 26,185 to 16,185. This would be an amendment to the main motion. That's a reduction of $10,000. Is someone going to second that?
I'll second.
I saw a hand, I heard a sound. I'll go to Mr. Burt. Dick, would you speak to your motion, please?
Again, they're not spending the money, and each year this happens, you know, and as you go from year to year, they're not spending it all. And so far, this year, they're not spending it all. And the prior year, they had 10,000 left over, 11,000. So I say, you know, there's an area I think we can reduce it. If it costs more in the next coming year, then we'll go put it back up there.
Mr. Burt, speak to your second, please.
I would support what, Mr. Fletcher said, that they are not using it. And, this is a good line. I think that's a good line to find. So I support it.
Anyone else want to speak on the amendment? Scott?
You know, this is one of those discretionary lines where, you know, you do wait until the end of the year, you do defer, and, what's happened over the last couple of years, we have not spent out of that line, but we're at a point now where we do have to replace a lot of the clothing that has, you know, worn, and that's the reasons why the price is the way it is that we have not, done what we needed to do over the last couple of years, because we haven't spent the money out of the budget. So we've tried to save and we've deferred. This is the year where we have to actually address it.
Further debate on that amendment? Then the question before you is, would you like to reduce the clothing and uniforms in DPW as an amendment to the main motion by $10,000? Are you ready for the question? Those in favor of that further $10 in reduction, please signify by raising your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Opposed? 1, 2, 3, 4, 10. 4. It passes. We are going to, again, I'm gonna call your name, please tell me. Dan, no. Bill Bates.
No, yes.
Bill Gordon.
Yes.
Kathy.
No.
Christie.
Yes.
Dick.
Yes.
Guy.
Yes.
Ivan.
Yes.
Jen.
Yes.
John Burt.
Yes.
John Dillon.
No.
John Heichel.
Yes.
Don't you like how I put all the Bills and Johns together? Paul?
Yes.
Scott?
No.
That passes 10-4. Let me update my schedules, please. Do we get $1,900,130 as a
Yes.
total reduction?
Yes, we do.
Okay, let me, and that was DPW. $1,900,130. You're welcome. Now, that is in Public Works Operations. 1,900,130. That's very good. The main motion has been amended. The total amount of the main motion is a reduction of $1,900,130. Do you need that repeated? Fine, seeing that, do you have a point of order, Dick?
No, I wanna make an amendment.
I will put you on the list. We are back to the main motion. Is there anyone else that would like to be on the list? Scott, anybody else? Cool. Mr. Bates?
Yes, I'd like to call the question.
Am I on the list?
No, you spoke. John, Bert, Christie, then Dick. You spoke right before Dick did.
No.
No, I
No.
didn't.
No, she didn't, he did.
I have to overrule the chair.
You know, he spoke after me, she didn't.
She didn't speak.
Excellent. Tell you what, you're on the list. Would you like to be on prior to the motion being called?
Yes,
You are in. Go.
all right.
I am holding off your motion
I got it. That's
for a moment.
I really was on the list.
Yeah, he
I
was.
have you written down. I also have you checked off for some reason.
You always do that.
Sorry.
I'd like to make an amendment to put back
Hang on. Yes.
$25,508 back into Parks and Rec.
Okay, hang on for a second, because what we do is we look at what it was, what it is, and where we're going. So, is that on the main motion sheet? Where?
Yes,
It's
the whole thing.
the bottom total, it was the total.
You want to reverse the entire section of Parks and Recs? Okay, let me record that, so give me a moment. Tell you what, does everybody understand her motion? Okay, do I have a second? Jen, okay, speak to your main motion, or to your amended motion.
I think historically, Parks and Recs has run a very tight budget, and I think, the commission is going to be charging user fees, but the facilities, if you've gone to all the facilities, are in dire straits of improvement, and if we don't put some money into our into the Parks and Recs, we're gonna lose our investment. And I think with the commission allowing, fees coming in for programs next year, I'm hoping that will offset some of the revenue they're looking for improvements, and, that will reduce that. But presently, I think they're absolute dire straits of improvement. I travel often with my children, and I can't think of a town that has their facilities in worse shape than Goffstown.
Jen,
I
speak to your
agree.
second.
Yeah, I agree with Christie 100%. I think that they have always come through with a very tight budget. I know that they are really hurting for supplies. I do agree that we need to invest in improving what we have, or we're going to lose what we have at a fairly grand scale and fairly quickly. And I also would like to see in the future fees for programs, as much as that would hurt some families. I do think it's also important for us to improve on this investment this year.
Scott?
I wholeheartedly support this amendment. I agree with everything Christie said. It is a department that has been run extremely lean, and in some cases lean to a detriment in terms of our ability to maintain equipment and our facilities, which I believe, and actually I shouldn't say I believe, I know for certain have caused us liability issues against the town, which we've had to pay out on. So I think we're being penny wise and pound foolish. We have to upgrade our facilities to a more safe condition. And in addition, I've heard this before with regard to the library, that more people are using the library. I can tell you a lot of people are using the Parks and Rec programs because they are either free or at a substantially reduced price. And this is where the community is spending their time. And in a bad economy, which we've been experiencing, people cannot go on vacation, so they stay locally. They go to their parks, they go to Glen Lake, they do these different things. And, I think this is another one of those issues where I think it is a rather small sum of money in the greater scheme of things, but it impacts so many people in a more positive way. So I would hope that you would support this increase.
Let me get the list. I've got Bill Gordon and then Guy. Bill, would you go? And then John D.
Okay.
You have the floor.
I can't support the entire motion. I think that perhaps some increase might be reasonable, but I think the whole boat of 25,000 is too much.
Guy?
Yeah, I would agree with Bill that I can't support it only because the past expenditures on these particular 7 lines, or 8 lines, don't support, in my view, an increase of 25,000, not based on past year's expenditures on these lines.
John Dillon?
I support this motion wholeheartedly also. I appreciate the comments Christie and Jen and Scott made. Just personal experience using the pool, using the park, but especially the pool. It's in absolute horrible condition at Barnard Park. I'd hope the money would be kept in the Parks and Rec budget if it's by selectmen and used to upkeep our parks. I do think also it's very similar to the library in the sense that it's a positive investment. Gives kids a place to go, gives families a place to go. It prevents other problems that crop up when you don't have good resources like that to go to.
I have Jen, Scott, and John Burt. Jen?
I just wanted to speak to Guy's point, which I agree the past year expenditures do not match up. However, I just wanted to remind the committee that it is under new leadership. I think that Rick is taking strides to expand on programming, reaching out to the smaller children in the population, but he's also trying to repair things and trying to fix things, and it's hard to do that without financial resources. So, and if you've ever visited the Barnard Park pool, bathroom at the pool, it's a scary experience.
Scott?
Yeah, I agree. I just want to reiterate with regard to Guy's point that while it is true that the past expenditures don't support the current amount, that's because it wasn't necessary perhaps in the past, or it was deferred in the past. I want to remind everybody what the presentation is that we got from Parks and Recreation. He talked about the fact that we have a diving board that does not work. He talked about that we do not have lifeguard stands. Those are liability issues. He talked about how the fact that we have pavilions that are in extreme disrepair, which he is only budgeting for the supplies, and he's going to get volunteers to do the manual labor. He's talked about the fact how kids wear the same recycled T-shirt year after year. So these are the things that, and basketballs that have been, worn. Knowing, Rick and the commission, and I just want to highlight once more what Christie said. They're going to be charging fees. This is the year to you have to get them to that point where they can start to manage it, more on their own. And it has been very austerely budgeted in the past, but I think in many respects to its detriment. This is an opportunity for us to right this ship.
John Burt?
The pool is being, I believe the pool is being fixed by Public Works, so that's not an issue.
Point of order? Not accurate.
No.
Okay, but it's not.
No,
know, know
I
what
can
to
put
do
you,
when someone
raise
says-
your hand and I'll put you on the list.
I apologize,
Mr. Burt, you have the floor.
Right. Well, if I misspoke, I apologize, but I thought I heard that. That they were transferring money from one department to the public, to the Parks and Recs. So if I am wrong, I apologize. I agree with Guy that the numbers of last year, would support the, $25,000 reduction. I'm having a hard time on this one because I know how important it is to have a good Parks and Rec department. So I'm just not sure how I'm gonna vote on this one.
Scott?
The money is coming from DPW's line. We took the money from the shouldering, the sidewalk that was gonna be on Lynchville Danis Park, and we're attempting to try to use that money to fix the two pools. And then that's gone out to bid. However, it does not include, that's just to repair the two pools. It does not include the lifeguard stands. It does not include all the other things that I had mentioned before. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Personal opinion, as a member of the committee, I know there's some fees coming in, and in my mind, just like you, I wish I could ask questions and get answers. I don't know how much we're thinking of getting fees, but I know there's something called a gross appropriation, where you have to get stuff in order to kind of sell stuff to get fees. And even though I think I would probably, if it was a lower number added back in, I could support it better. But if I voted in favor to put it back in, we do get another whack at it after. So either way we go, we still have another whack. So as Mr. Burt said, don't know if anybody else is gonna talk. John will, which means I can think. I put John Heichel and Dick and John Burt back on the list. Mr. Heichel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was, in hearing this, in all the years I've been on the Budget Committee, all I've heard was praise for how the Parks and Rec has been run over the many years under the last leader, under the last director of it. And now tonight I'm hearing that it's in disrepair, diving board's not working. And one of my questions is who was overseeing the head of that department for those years? And why was that neglected? So I have a real serious question with that, because this is the first that I've heard that department or any of its equipment was in disrepair, because all we've ever heard is how well it was run. So, maybe we need to.
No, I'm just looking to see the budget opinion. There's a little latitude, but I couldn't see the connection yet. With support, not support, that kind of thing is what I'm looking for, or something that's budget related,
Well, I'm gonna go on all
not
my
personnel.
past experiences of what I've heard,
Yeah.
that the department was being run very well, and I'm gonna consider not voting for any increase.
Okay. John Burt?
Wasn't there one before me?
Yeah, Dick. I did the same thing to
You
Dick
know-
as I did Chrissy. I just said John Burt and I crossed off Dick. Sorry. Mr. Fletcher, you have the floor.
Okay, I'm gonna make an amendment to the amendment, but before I do, I wanna say, the reason I'm gonna do it is because the Parks and Recreation buildings and the facilities, it's not because they aren't taking care of it. You've gotta realize the kids, the people that use it are the ones that are smashing it up. Now, the diving board, that's out to the weather, and some of the pool stuff that they talk about, and it's metal, it's gonna rot out, so it needs to be fixed. We can fix them buildings as long as you want. They've set fires in them in the past. They've smashed the toilets. In fact, I was in the plumbing business back in the 70s, and we spent 2 or 3 days every year when they opened the parks, changing the toilets, changing the lavatories, and even during the year, they were plugging the toilets up, they were breaking into them. You know, they have a hard job, one person trying to keep track of that place and keep it up. So it's a continuous maintenance problem. So I'm gonna make an amendment to Chrissy's amendment, that we give them $12,000 to fix the pool and the diving board and and the place for the lifeguards. Because the reason I'll say that and cut it in half is because Scott says they've already talked about fixing the pools, and they have a plan and an attack on it.
Hang on while I calculate your motion for the committee.
Maybe it would be that 65-100 line?
It's everything less the 12, 6, 15. Basically, it's, the difference is, right, I'm trying to come up to the net amount is gonna be, what he's doing to Christie's motion is gonna make the net effect adding $12,615 back in. But the amended motion has to be worded to reduce Christie's motion, okay?
I wanna reduce it.
By the
half.
difference.
Round it out, round it out.
You wanna round it out, but it's gonna be in 65100 is where you wanna put it.
Yeah.
65,100.
So it would be like 12, 5.
254. Hang on. Oh, I love my real keyboard. Wow. 290,000 even? 262, pretty close.
That's the way it goes.
Okay, the motion, if I do this right, let me just make sure. $24, nope. $12,754, hang on. It's 402262. $12,754. All right.
I don't agree with that.
Christie's motion was to add 25,508.
Right.
Dick's amendment to her amendment is to reduce that by 12,754, which leads to an additional, if it were to pass, but I'll get that after we go into the next round of discussion. What this actually does is, Christie's motion made it go from 376, 754 up to 402, 262. Dick's motion will bring that down to 389, 508. Okay? Is there a second to that motion? Hmm?
Second.
Dick's motion?
Yes, Dick's motion, Dick's amendment to the amendment. Okay, Kathy. Dick, would you please speak to your amendment of Christie's motion? You want to speak to the amendment? You kind of already did.
I already did, but again, I must iterate, that this is gonna be a continuous problem forever. Unless somebody sits there 24 hours a day, you're not gonna stop them from smashing the toilets. You're not gonna stop them from breaking the faucets. You're not gonna stop them from plugging up the toilet. That's gonna be a continuous problem forever. It always has been, it always will. They've actually set fires in there, set the buildings on fire in the past. I've put them out. We need to maintain the pools. Scott said that they have a plan and an attack to take care of that. So we still need to put some stuff in the pools. We need to fix the diving board. That's gonna always, over years, rust out. It's metal. Today, I guess you're using fiberglass. Maybe that'll stop it, but when they get the horsing around on it, pretty soon it'll break it, so, these are things that go on all the time, and you gotta, and if you don't spend the money, you fix them. Sometimes I wonder when I see maintenance lines here and they don't spend it all, why?
Kathy, speak to your second, please.
I think that Dick's motion is a good compromise, and I think that it's a great idea as far as the prospect of charging fees, especially to people that are non-residents of Goffstown. I know that lots of people come here to visit, and unfortunately, the more people that come from different places, the more wear and tear, so hence the more costs that our town has to bear.
Anyone else want to, John? Dylan?
I'm against Dick's compromise, cutting, I'd like to put the whole 25,000 back for Parks and Rec. We're still talking about reducing the whole town budget by almost 1.9 million. So we're talking insignificant amount of money. I'd rather send 25,000 back to Parks and Rec.
Further discussion on the amendment to the amendment? None. Here be the question, okay? Let's not get too confused. Right now, there is an amendment that Christie made that's on the floor to add back in $25,508. Dick made an amendment to that that said only half of it. So right now, what we're gonna do is we're gonna vote on Dick's amendment to Christie's. If you vote yes, we are then gonna return to Christie's amendment and talk about whether we wanna amend Guy's motion by adding back in only $12,754 to Parks and Rec. So the question is, do you wanna talk about adding $25,508 back to Parks and Recs? Or do you wanna talk about adding $12,754 back to Parks and Recs? If you answer the question, yes, you're voting to talk about $12,754. If you vote no, we will talk about $25,508. Do we understand the question? Those in favor of talking about $12,754, please raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Those opposed? 1, 2, 3, that's 14. The motion passed. I'm gonna call the roll. Dan said yes. Bill Bates?
Yes.
Bill Gordon?
Yes.
Kathy?
Yes.
Christie?
Oh, no.
Dick?
Yes.
Guy?
Yes.
Ivan?
Yes.
Jen?
No.
John B?
Yes.
John D? Dylan?
No.
John Heichel?
Yes.
Paul?
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
Okay, that is 11-3. We are now discussing Christie's motion, which has now been amended to add $12,754 back to the Parks and Recs from Guy's original motion. I had on the list John Burt to talk about that.
I feel more comfortable with that number, so I would support that. I think with that additional money, it will still increase their budget from last year. I hope I'm right, and, yes, it will. And, so I think it's a good number to look at, and, I wanna thank Selectman Gross for pointing out how they're gonna fix the pools.
Hang on a second. Okay. Is there anyone else who wants to speak to the motion? The amendment? Seeing none, we are now gonna vote. The vote now is to see whether Christie's amendment to add as amended, $12,754 back to Parks and Rec to the main motion. Ready for the question? If you vote yes, that means Guy's original motion will have $12,754 more in Parks and Rec than his motion had. If you vote no, it stays where it was. Okay? Good? Those in favor of the $12,754 add back in, please signify by raising your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Opposed? 1, 2, 3. I'm do a roll call. Dan is yes. Bill Bates?
Yes.
Bill Gordon?
No.
Kathy?
Yes.
Christie?
Yes.
Dick?
Yes.
Guy?
Yes.
Ivan?
Yes.
Jen?
Yes.
John Burt?
Yes.
John Dillon?
No.
John Heichel?
Yes.
Paul?
No.
Scott?
Yes.
That is 11-3, that motion passes. The net result of the amendment, okay, is not a reduction of $25,508, but a reduction of $12,754. So we essentially added $12,754 back to Guy's original motion.
Which line are you adding that to?
I am adding that to 45201, 64100. In essence,
Okay.
the selectmen's 27,615 will go up slightly by $100 and something when we're done.
That's a different line number. 65,100?
65,100, I'm sorry.
That's where you're adding it?
Yes, that's what,
Okay.
that's what his motion was, to split the difference into 65100. And so, at this time, I have 1,887,376. Can I have a confirmation?
Repeat.
1,887,376.
In a second here. No.
Okay, here, that
The-
one.
You're talking about the total adjusted number now?
Yes,
I've got 389,508.
no, this is the total. Your motion, the effect of your motion. Sorry. I've got it for-
1,887,376.
Yeah. The budget for Parks and Rec, 389,508. That is what you said, yes. All right, everybody, we are back to the main motion. I have Bill Bates, Dick, and Scott on the list, and I'll put Christie. Anybody else want to go on the list? Because you know what's going to happen. Done, go.
I move the question.
All right, hang on, peoples. Just trying to be fair totally. Bill B. Bill Bates has moved the question, called the question, however we want to say it. Is there a second? Paul seconds it. Sorry, Ivan. I saw it come forward on the right. This is not debatable. It's either an up-down vote. Those in favor, can you imagine discussing whether we want to call it? Those in favor of calling the question, which means, the way we do it, Dick will speak, Scott will speak, and Christie will speak. Okay?
Can we make any more amendments?
If that's part of your speak.
Okay.
Those in favor of calling the question, signify by raising your hand. Is that everybody's hand? Cool. That's unanimous, and so I don't have to call the roll, I'm just gonna put a Y under everybody. What this means is 3 people get to talk. If they wanna propose amendments, that's okay, not a problem, we'll go through that whole process again. When everything is done, okay, and we come back to the main motion, it's over, nobody else is talking. We will vote on the main question, okay? Because the question has been called. There are 3 people. Dick, you have the floor.
I wanna make an amendment.
Thank you, Dick.
And I would be remiss if I didn't.
What would you like to make an amendment
Okay,
to?
under solid waste operations, and this goes to the uniform line, clothing and uniforms, okay.
Did we talk about that already?
Yeah, 44,150.
Did that in
We,
Public Works.
Public Works, not in solid waste.
oh, this is, okay, so, let me get
So at solid
there.
waste, it's 5,
It's
it's
four-
1043211445150.
Okay, 43211, 44150.
Right.
Let me, you got us all excited thinking that we might not have to do this. 44150, okay, clothing and uniforms, yes, sir, what would you like to,
I wanna change that 5,648 to $3,000.
okay, 5648 to 3000, which is a reduction of $2,648. Does everybody understand the motion? The motion is to reduce clothing and uniforms and solid waste by 2648. Is that a second, Bill? Bill Gordon seconded it. And Dick, would you go ahead and speak to your motion, please?
Again, by looking across that line from last year, wait a minute, from '09, right? They only spent, about half of it. And then this year so far, they've only spent about half of it. So that still gives them $3,000, which, would be close to half of it, what they had.
And there's only 4 people working that.
Bill Gordon, speak to the second.
Yes. Looking at their year-end '09, they were slightly under 3,000. They made it that time, and I think I would love to see everything fairly flat. I think that makes reasonable sense.
Any else? That's a pen, not a hand. Scott?
I can comment, right?
Debate time. Do it, as long as you relate it to.
In some of the cases, I think, the case has been made that when you budget, sometimes you have to budget in this year, monies that you may not have budgeted in prior years for given reasons, and consequently, you will see lines on here, and I will show you, a typical one would be the second one down in terms of cemetery operations, where, at the year end of 2009, it was 26,044. At the year end, currently, it's at 26,546, that has been spent, but yet, we budgeted 20,664. So using the same train of thought, what you're basically telling the department head to do is to really not budget what you need, but to always budget what you spent last year or what you had last year. And I think that sends a kind of a poor message. So, using that train of thought, if my next motion was to raise the seasonal employee wages up, because over the last 2 years, that's what we spent, I don't know I'm curious how to see what your response would be. That was just a statement, no, that was a rhetorical question.
No, that was actually fairly good in the way you debate. So just as a parliamentary procedure, that is an okay thing to do. Any further comment on Dick's clothing and uniforms amendment? Seeing none, be you ready for the question? Simple question. We're gonna reduce that line by 2648. Those in favor of the reduction signify by raising your hand, please. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, that's 12. Opposed, 2, that's 14. That's easy, hang on. I did, and Scott did. That passes. Give me a moment to update the spreadsheet, please. 2648 and 43,211.
That has to do with printing of the ballots, number of elections.
Okay, I now have a net number reduction of $1,890,024. Do I get confirmation?
Yes.
1,890,024. See, once we get cooking, it works better. Took us a little bit to get there, but we're there. That takes care of Dick. Scott, you are next on the list to talk on the main motion.
I would like to, can I reserve my place in the line till after this motion is said? Because I think it's cleaner in order to do it the way that Bill has
No, it's
endeavoring.
the question's been called, you're next on the list, you're next on the list.
I'm gonna defer until.
If you stop your place, then Christie will talk, and then we're gonna vote.
Yeah, I'm fine. I'll get back on the list after.
After we vote on
Yep.
on this motion?
Yes.
Okay. So Scott is done. Christie, you are actually, go
I'd
ahead.
like to make an amendment.
Oh, thank you, Christie.
It's the
It worked the
last one.
first time.
It's the
In
last
what
one.
department?
In administration, 41401, under election.
Yeah?
Oh, that's on the.
I would like to restore the $2,000 the guy reduced it by,
Printing and binding.
yes. I don't-
Printing and binding's original selectmen's budget was 6,000. And it got reduced in this amendment to 4,000. You wanna put it back to
Are you
6,000.
looking at guys or,
Guy's amendment that we're talking about had a resulting adjusting budget of $4,000. If you wanna add 2,000 to it, it goes back. You're talking 41401, 47500, printing and binding?
Like that's right here.
is that, no, I'm looking at this, the sheet he gave us,
This sheet?
yeah,
Yeah? What do you see?
43,719, and he took out 2,000.
What is 43,719? That's not the town clerk election.
Yeah,
What is the first 5 numbers?
well, on Guy's sheet, I'm looking at 41401.
Yeah? And the next 5 numbers?
Where is
Yeah, see right here, this is what it goes to. That's what that $2,000 is for printing and binding. For the election.
Oh. Christie, you're making, your number you're looking at is at a total
Right.
for that department. That is not the motion I'm accepting.
Okay,
Since the motion was made on a detailed line item, I am taking your motion on a detailed line item.
okay. I'll continue with that, can I?
With that detailed line item as your motion. Yes, not to explain it, but is that your motion?
Well,
To restore that $2,000 funding?
yes.
Okay. Do I have a second? Scott is seconded. Christie, speak to your motion, please.
Kathy Ball spoke at deliberative. She came in and spoke to the group. I think she made a very good case as to election workers and how they are budgeted down to the penny. And I don't think, I respect what she said, and I think we should restore that back into her budget.
Scott?
Yeah, this line has to do with the printing of the ballots, not so much the number of elections. So consequently, when you budget, you don't know how many petition warrant articles you get, you don't know how, and the biggies are the zoning ones, and those can be like half a page. So that's really more reflective. So I know in one of the comments, the rationale was only 1 election in 11 versus 3 in 2010. That's really not the purpose here. The purpose of this amount is the sheer number of the ballots that have to be printed and the number of pages per ballot. And that's why that amount was budgeted the way that it was.
Guy?
The number of ballots you have to print is still multiplied by the number of elections that you have. Kathy Ball spoke at deliberative in February in regards to the 2010 elections. And we were talking about the 2010 budget, that's why she brought it up. And I remember last year, we forgot there were 3 elections when we had set the line item. But this year, we've got 1 coming up. And that means we're gonna have 2/3 fewer ballots to print, because we've got 1 instead of 3. So I'm not gonna support the motion.
I'm on the list. John Dillon is on the list. Bill Gordon is on the list. I get to speak with this from a slightly different perspective. One, there's something that we're gonna do next year that we only do every 10 years in elections, and that is to go through what they call the verification of the checklist. It's a purge. The way the law reads, every 10 years, day job, guys. You gotta send a letter to anyone who is on the checklist, who has not participated in elections for the last 4 years. And I did an analysis of that. To give you comparison, Manchester has just slight of 12,000, and gee, I wish I could remember the number. I don't wanna tell you there's 3,000 in Goffstown. There's a substantial amount of individuals that are on the checklist in Goffstown that haven't participated in 4 years. And what that does is somewhere in this budget, I'm not sure where it is, and I'm not gonna say it's this line, but you gotta buy the paper, you gotta buy the envelopes, and you gotta get them out. I'm presuming that the postage for that must be into postage, but because of that, now, I don't know where it is, and I wanna see that job done for $2,000, I'm supporting the extra $2,000. John Dillon. And I'll put Scott back on the list.
I support restoring the 2,000. I remember her presentation. I thought she did a really good job. She actually brought her budget in under budget. It seemed like she had gone over everything with a fine-tooth comb. So I'm just not, I'd like to see a cut of 2,000, but I lack the confidence to say it makes sense.
Bill Gordon?
I can't support the entire 2,000. I'm going under the assumption that this line is just the ballots, the printing, that piece, and not the part that Dan's talking about. So I cannot support the entire 2,000. I do say that the town election requires a great deal of printing, and the other elections are a lot less printing. So I can't support the entire 2,000. But I think perhaps an adjustment might be made.
I have Scott, John Burt, and Dan. Go.
I apologize, I think I explained this in a wacky way, but the only ballots that we pay for are the March elections. So we don't pay for a state or a federal type election. So all we're only talking about is one, it's the March election. That's what we're responsible for, you know, and Dan, you can attest to the other. So, and again, we don't know what's gonna happen in terms of, you know, petition articles. You don't know that until January. And again, I think some people have alluded to this. You know, Kathy Ball is a very meticulous person in terms of her attention to detail. I think she budgets very conservatively, and I think that gives her that opportunity so that there's not a lot of wiggle room in other lines to make accommodations if all of a sudden that cost happens to be $1,000 more than we thought it would be. So, and I also have full faith and confidence in her and our other department heads that if it does not get spent, it's gonna get returned, so.
John Burt?
I agree with what John Dillon and Scott Gross says. You know, I think Kathy Ball runs an extremely tight ship up there. I believe the money, she would have not added it in if she didn't need it, and I'm glad you, Chair, said what you said, because that confirmed my decision to say yes.
I have Dan and Guy on the list. Dan? Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I need to affirm what Scott said. In the primary and in the general elections, the state fronts the money to print all those ballots. That's just an affirmation for you. Guy?
Scott, thank you for pointing that out. I didn't know that either. And you're right. I mean, if anybody's budgets are on the money, pardon the pun, it's Kathy's. I'm gonna support it.
Further discussion? Ooh, that was pretty close, the two of you. I'm gonna go Dick first and then John.
Yeah, what you said was, that somebody tells us we gotta send a letter. Who told us that?
The state.
Is it the legislature, or is it some administrative?
Here we go.
Not gonna answer.
We're in debate mode.
It's gotta be an RSA.
We're in debate mode. If someone chooses to answer and put their name on their list, they may do so. Otherwise than that, you've made your comment. Mr. Heichel.
Whoa, smooth.
And there's no question Kathy runs she runs her department very well. But last year, there was an issue that we took some money from her, and she really wanted it put back in. And we put it back in. And with that being put back in, can you just clarify for me that that was the right choice that we made, now looking at hindsight? Was that the right choice that we made in putting that in? And looking at these numbers, you know, could she have done without us returning that $1,000 or $1,500, if I remember what that number was? Could you answer that question for me, Mr. Chairman?
Okay, as we're in debate mode, questions are not asked or answered unless you want to be put on the list. Fortunately, my name's on the list. Anybody else want to go on the list on this one? All right, I heard a couple of comments made that said, who is making us do this? Is it the legislature? The answer is yes. The legislation was passed in 1980, 1981 that said these checklists must be purged in 1981 and every 10 years thereafter, or every year that ends in a 1, okay? It's a legislative mandate. It's what it is, so it's gotta be done. I don't know what the penalties of not doing it, but for $2,000, gee whiz, maybe we can do it. From my recollection, though, I don't believe this committee restored a whole lot. I believe it was done at deliberative session. And in fact, if I remember correctly, it cost us a whole heck of a lot more than that small amount she was looking for because...
Was it for food?
Dick, we're in debate mode. I'm gonna stop right there, I'm good. Anybody else wanna talk about this? Cool, we are done. Are you ready for the question? The question is, do you wanna add the $2,000 back in that the main motion took out for printing and binding and elections? That is the question. If you say yes, we're gonna add it back in. If you say no, it's gonna stay as it is. Those in favor of adding it back in, please signify by raising your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Opposed? 1. That's gonna be easy, Paul. No. The motion passes, and we go back to the main motion. Let me tell you what the number is that I currently have. I have $1,888,024.
Confirm.
Okay, so. Oh, look at my list. The question was called. We're done. It is now 9:23. Perfect timing, because we said we would try to end between 9:20 and 9:30. Here you the question. The total reduction that we're going to vote on is $1,888,024. Do you need me to read the various categories in total, but not necessarily the detail?